So, you find yourself on the UnrealEntGaming channel. How fortunate for you. I, Lord Frieza, will spare your life as long as you subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, don't forget to become a member of UnrealEntGaming's Patreon for tons of exclusive content to early access media and much more. Do it now, or else.
With the final Dragon Ball Daima episode now having to bring about the long-standing final battle involving King Gomah within the Demon Realm and having to battle against our heroes primarily now against what seemingly looks to be that of adult Super Saiyan 4 Goku within Dragon Ball Daima, I hereby now want to welcome you all to my final Dragon Ball Daima anime episode review for Dragon Ball Daima anime episode number 20, as I will go as far as to say it now just as I did last week and the week prior to that. What an incredible episode this was from start to finish, even now from the very beginning of what we saw take place during this episode. And that was right from the very beginning of this episode, we get to see a full demonstration on how dangerous this version of Super Saiyan 4 Goku is. And being that this is the final episode of the series, this was hands down, if anything, the most action-packed episode yet, because no matter what it was from the very beginning that Goku did to Gomah, we get to see the full demonstration be implemented by the artists, by the entire team behind production, because the entirety of the scene of Goku just simply whooping Gomah all throughout the Demon Realm felt as though I was watching a movie, and that was mainly due to the fact of how Goku was going in there and having to battle against Gomah. And you know what? To Gomah's credit, early on in the beginning, just a little bit, Gomah did look as though he was trying to hang in there, but Goku was really bringing the heat. And I think this goes as far as to show the demonstration behind what the difference is while they're kids versus as they're adults, because Super Saiyan 4 adult Goku, by comparison to that of mini Super Saiyan 4 Goku, is a tremendous difference in contrast between the two, because adult Goku was not slowing down, he was bringing the heat, he was bringing the fire, but to Gomah's credit, like I said, he was fighting back. And I think this to me reminded me so much of the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie in a way, because it wasn't only with all of the colors being shown on screen, but it was the movement, it was the intensity, it was the overall action between the two that really went as far as to remind me of one of the best iterations that we've seen from Dragon Ball Super, of course, which was that of Broly. Because with so many people having to consider the highball standard of Dragon Ball being Broly, I think this episode definitely had matched that, because there was even a little scene in between their fight where it looked as though they were in that shattered dimension that Gogeta and Broly were in, and I don't think that was initially the case here, but to see the way adult Goku was literally ragdolling Gomah all throughout the landscape, this was unquestionably, objectively, one of the best fights in Dragon Ball as a whole. And you really don't have to like Gomah as a villain, you really don't have to either even be a fan of Super Saiyan 4 to say that this was a good fight, because it was. And I think the overall demonstration behind what we ended up seeing between the two actually ends up proving that, because even despite the fact with the third eye giving Gomah consistent amps and consistent boosts, I think that was a good thing in kind of an interesting way to see how that would be something that would hold up against Super Saiyan 4. But even then, with the way Super Saiyan 4 Goku was powering up, with the way Super Saiyan 4 Goku was unleashing more of his power, it was beautiful to see, and I mean spectacularly, because even with Gomah trying to launch several attacks down at Goku, despite with the fact of Goku powering up in such a way, I think if anything this was unquestionably one of the most intense power-ups that I've ever seen, I think midway throughout the course of this fight. And with the way Goku was positioning himself in powering up and amping himself so much so to power up for this ginormous Kamehameha was simply something that I will say that this was everything that I think people promised that Daima would hopefully end up in turning out to be, because with Goku unleashing, right, with Goku having to amp himself up and unleashing the full extent of his Kamehameha against Gomah's attack, was this only that something yet again reminded me so much of the good old days of Dragon Ball Z, of the good portions of the Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super movies. Everything that was, or at least everything that I was hoping for to see in a fight between the two, was this something that I ended up getting from this battle, because with the intensity behind Goku's Kamehameha, it was shocking to see how Goku ended up blasting right through Gomah's entire body, because just when you kind of thought, because I initially thought that we weren't going to see anything like that in a way, because not only did Goku go as far as to unleash a Kamehameha that was so large in scale that it blasted right through Gomah, but Goku's Kamehameha wave was so powerful that it literally shredded through the other portions, the other realms of the Demon Realm itself, and that in and of itself in terms of scale is so incredible to see, because Goku literally blasted through several different portions of the realm, right? But it didn't stop there, because as soon as Gomah went down on his knees, this was the moment, this was the actual opportunity that Piccolo needed to actually swoop on in ultimately doing what Dr. Orinsu said, and that was deliver 3 critical hits to Gomah's eye, at least to knock it out of his head, because without the overall eye giving him that amp, Piccolo was close. Piccolo actually got 2 hits in before Gomah actually ended up recovering, which is actually very interesting to see, because I wasn't expecting to see some form of a regeneration actually take place here, because initially all that was left, all that was needed was one more strike to the head in order for Gomah to be put down for good. But I guess now it's safe to say that the third eye actually amps up the host so much so that even while at the brink of death, you can actually end up regenerating similar to that of a Majin or even Cell. But surprisingly enough, as wacky as it was, all it actually took at the very end was Ku by using the book and bumping Gomah from behind, in which ultimately resulted in Gomah actually having to not only depower himself and have the eye actually fall out of his head, but subsequently enough, it was due to Goku, of course it was due to Piccolo, and Majin Ku, who were ultimately responsible in having to be the ones to stop Gomah, which even surprisingly had prompted someone like Glorio to quickly swoop on in after seeing the third eye fall down onto the ground and stomp it into an oblivion. Was I only beginning to question further on if this was the right choice? Because if you decide to include elements of Daima within something like, I don't know, Dragon Ball Super, then how interesting would it inevitably be if we saw the third eye, let's just say, in something like Dragon Ball Super, right? So by the end of it, with DEGESU and Gomah being shown having to be apprehended, and interestingly enough, with Marbara actually using magic alongside with Orinsu to go as far as to agree by having to lock away and sealing both Gomah and DEGESU within this jar, was a very interesting choice, because quite frankly, we don't see too often where a villain is either locked away or sealed away in some form or fashion, and I think to me this was a very good and unique choice to go with, because they could have ultimately slaughtered Gomah if they happened to have chosen to do so, but we instead ended up actually seeing by the end how Shin was talking to his sister, which again, I don't fully trust Dr. Orinsu at all, because it does look as though she has sinister motives, even after having to capture and seal away DEGESU and Gomah. Everything by the very end, given that this was and this is one of Akira Toriyama's final pieces of work, I think was very subtle and very well needed, because in typical Dragon Ball fashion, as everyone went as far as to kind of make amends and kind of move along with the story to kind of not only pay their respects if needed, of course, by having to show Ku respect for being the one to knock out, you know, King Gomah's eye, and to even show appreciation towards our heroes after initially trying to destroy them, I think was really fun. But by the very end of it, we get to actually see how, assumingly enough, prior to the actual subtext, we get to see how Ku, I think assumingly here, give or take, depends on how you want to look at it, ends up being crowned the new Demon King of the Demon Realm, because he has a cape, and as wacky as he is and as inferior to Majin Buu in power comparison that he is, he's actually a whole lot smarter. So in a way, it does kind of make sense to have someone like him become, I guess, the new ruling commander of the Demon Realm, even though in a sense I was assuming that this was going to be Dr. Orinsu and company, but this was very unexpected, I think at least, because it wasn't as though Majin Ku had some sort of a sinister or ulterior motive, because because we know that he really, in a way, isn't evil, he's just silly. But to see him appoint Glorio, to see him appoint and actually honor Pansy and her father, I think was a pretty cool thing as well. And mind you, this is coming from someone, me, who never liked Kuda to begin with. I don't like Majin Ku and Majin Buu, but you know what? I will give them their chops and I will give them credit where credit is due, because it was something that was different. It was something that I felt as though was needed, and I think that in some kind of a way this is going to tie into potentially what we might end up getting way later on down the road in terms of what we might end up seeing in Dragon Ball Super. But to that I would also say not to hold your breath too, because it looked as though our heroes still remember everything, so there was no memory wipe, there was no, I guess, action and or consequence behind our heroes not remembering these events to begin with. So their memory seems to be intact, and it looks as though they are going to be remembering everything by the end of this. So it wasn't painted in a way to portray the villains as not being villainous, because the villains actually in some kind of a way ended up being the heroes by the end, because as soon as we get to see our heroes finally say goodbye and having to kind of tell them, hey, see you next time kind of thing, we know that this isn't really the end in a way. But as unfortunate as it is, this was indeed the end of Dragon Ball Daima, and man, what a roller coaster from start to finish, in having this unquestionably be the absolute best episode I think within the series, possibly even maybe being neck and neck with episode 19. Everything just felt so good towards the latter portion of the series, which one thing that I will say surprised me at the very end of this, because I wasn't expecting any kind of like a post-credit scene to be shown. But interestingly enough, Goku and company actually went back to that same shop where they ended up getting those fusion bugs and stuff like that, because they ended up losing those bugs to begin with, remember? So while they were in this shop, they actually ended up getting several unique bugs, and I think one of them, I think there's something that references to that of the third eye in a sense, because interestingly enough, as soon as Pansy was walking around the shop, we actually end up seeing 2 additional third eyes in one of those jars as well. So although in a way we get to see how Gomah's third eye was destroyed, there are 2 more eyes in those jars that ultimately can end up being used once again as the series ends up coming to a close, with the eye having to look at them. So never say never, never say never in terms of what may end up happening in the future here, because at the end of the day, anything can come from this, and I really did enjoy that, because just when I thought that the third eye was destroyed, there are 2 more that remain. So, but even now, by the end of all of this, I want to go in ahead now and get your thoughts down in the comment section below, not only in pertains to how you guys felt about Dragon Ball Daima anime episode number 20, but what I also want to know are your overall initial thoughts on Dragon Ball Daima as a whole, and whether you are on the side in believing that Daima is the best iteration of Dragon Ball, or if you're on the side of absolutely thinking that Daima was a complete waste of time. It's okay to express how you truly feel deep inside if you're a fan of Daima or not, because from creators to fans to many people all around the world, not everyone is going to find every single thing about Daima perfect, nor are you going to find anyone who is going to think objectively that everything showcased in Daima was utterly terrible. But for what it was worth, I really did enjoy what Daima ended up becoming later on as the episodes continued to progress, and although it did become a little predictable at a certain point to assume that Gomah was going to be the one, even though I thought that he really wasn't, to see what ultimately ended up transpiring and having the Tamagamis be involved and having the Majins essentially having to kind of turn face and join our heroes and being on the side and having to take down Gomah, there were lots of elements that I think fit for Dragon Ball Daima, even though in my own personal opinion, there have been many episodes that I felt as though were extremely dragged out and very unneeded in a way, very boring essentially, and having to have certain things come about. The recurring theme of having their ship continuously crash over and over again, as there were many elements to Dragon Ball Daima that I essentially did not like whatsoever, as there were other elements to Dragon Ball Daima that I greatly found myself having to enjoy. So all in all, I am extremely thankful that the late great Akira Toriyama had left us off with such amazing sequences and such an amazing kind of narrative moving forward, especially towards the latter half of Daima, in not only going as far as to give us a really cool fight with the quote big bad of the entirety of Daima series, but on top of this, to go as far as to see Super Saiyan 3 Mini Vegeta, Super Saiyan 3 Adult Vegeta, Super Saiyan 4 Mini Goku, and Super Saiyan 4 Adult Goku. These are things that I think are going to live on in infamy, so I have to say to the late great Toriyama, thank you so much for once again instilling upon all of us another memory for us to carry on through the course of our lives with. And I think for what it was worth, Dragon Ball Daima was really entertaining. Again, parts of it were boring, parts of it were really unnecessary, but it was an incredibly fun journey to undertake, and having to go through this entire ordeal and having to reach this very point in time at the very end of the series now. So by the end of it all, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts down below. Again, thank you all so much for tuning back in. Thank you all so much for your time. To which, once more, if you also just so happen to be new to this channel and of course love Dragon Ball and anime, then I do encourage for you all to head on down below and smash that subscribe button, on top of making sure to give this video a big fat thumbs up by smashing that like button down below. Tune back in for more, and with all that being said, I want to thank you all so much for your time, as I will be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy, everybody, and have a great day. Peace!
Hello! Did you know that you can stay up to date with the latest Dragon Ball content by simply subscribing to UnrealEntGaming?
Also, don't forget to follow on these social media platforms, you sexy son of a bitch.
Roshi!
Silent Cell, me and the fans are having a moment. That's right. I know what you want. Extra long, thick Dragon Ball content. Quality reviews with flawless editing. Yeah, you'd like that, wouldn't you? You dirty bitch.
Roshi, the fuck?
God damn it, I need them to subscribe, Cell.
And we're demonetized.
Yeah, screw it. Let's cut to the video.